We're going to continue our discussion from yesterday concerning the purposes of the law. We know the Old Testament law was given for purposes. If the law's not bad, it's a good thing. It's perfect, it's holy. So the Lord gives it for a reason, but it's never for the reason of salvation. The law cannot save us. The law cannot change us. But God has purposes for it. We saw 4 of those purposes yesterday. I'm going back to 1 Timothy chapter 1 today, where we started yesterday, where it says, but we know that the law is good if one uses it lawfully. So what are some of the lawful purposes of the law? And we saw 4 of those yesterday. Here's another one right in 1 Timothy, and that it is that the law has the ability to restrain sin. Now that seems to be counterintuitive, because yesterday we saw that the law increases sin. When people are told they can't do things, they defiantly want to do them. And in that sense, it builds up rebellion and defiance. But at the same time, restrictions and laws of various kind keeps people within boundaries. It's kind of the guardrails of society. So we have laws such as speeding laws. If there was no laws about how fast we could drive on our highways, we would have anarchy and chaos. And so these kinds of laws keep us within certain boundaries. So Paul talks about that in verse 9 of 1 Timothy chapter 1. Knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous person, but for those who are lawless and rebellious, for the ungodly and sinners, for the unholy and godless, for those who kill their fathers or mothers, for murderers, and so forth. We go on with that list of things. So he's pointing out these different ones who are involved in horrendous sins, and the law gives us some boundaries. So, for example, he mentions murderers here. So if there's no law against murder, then there would be no consequences, and therefore many more murders would be committed. So the law has that purpose of restraining, putting those boundaries around society. But there's other purposes too, and one of the most important is found in chapter 7 of Romans, where it shows us the very terrible nature of sin. Romans chapter 7 and verse 8 talks about that. And so this chapter is one of the key passages in all Scripture on the law. And Paul is talking about his own battles with sin and how the law adds to that battle. But he says in verse 8, but sin, taking opportunity through the commandment, worked out in me coveting of every kind, for apart from the law, sin is dead. Now I once was alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin revived, and I died. And this commandment, which was to lead to life, was found to lead to death for me. Now here he goes on with his reasoning. For sin, taking an opportunity through the commandment, deceived me, and through it killed me. So the law is holy, and the commandment is holy, and righteous and good. Now verse 13. Therefore, did that which is good become a cause of death for me? May it never be. Rather, it was sin, in order that it may be shown to be sin by working my death through that which is good, so that through the commandments sin would become utterly sinful. See what he's saying there? He's saying that sin itself is so ugly and so bad and so wrong that it's able to take that which is good, the law of God, and use it against me. And so while the law itself is good, sin is shown to be its very worst, the sinfulness of sin, because of its use of something that is good. So the law reveals sin. The law reveals the ugliness and the awfulness of sin, because the law would lead us to good, and sin leads us to bad and uses the law for its own purposes. And so there's that purpose. It shows us, it helps us see the very need for our grace, because we ourselves are hopelessly bound up in sin. So that's a sixth reason that we've looked at now as to why the Lord gave us the law. Let me look at one more in Galatians chapter 3 and verse 24. It says this, and it calls it a tutor. It says, therefore the law has become our tutor into Christ, so that we may be justified by faith. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail on this chapter because it's not our purpose here, but the tutor was kind of like a nanny in the as we think of it, not as a teacher, but a nanny. And so the nanny took care of children. These tutors were slaves who took care of the wealthy people's children. And they made sure they went to school, made sure they did their homework, made sure they did all the things they're supposed to do, and they guided them. The law in the Old Testament, he's saying here, is this. The law, until Christ came, the law served as our nanny, our tutor, to bring us to the place of faith. Until the faith wrapped up in the gospel of Jesus Christ came in the New Testament sense, the law served the purpose of leading us there and taking care of us till we came there. So the law has a number of wonderful purposes that we've looked at, this Old Testament law. But as we'll see tomorrow, we have been released from the law. So what does that mean for us? I want to look at that with you tomorrow and see what the scriptures have to say.